Hello, I'm Katey Pigden, the editor of Money Marketing. It's brilliant to be back at an in-person event here in Harrogate for our Money Marketing Interactive event. I'm joined by Nick Bird today. I've managed to catch him before he goes on stage later on this afternoon, where we're going to talk about inheritance planning and the importance of transferring wealth. We've spoke before about the importance of estate planning.
Yeah.
I just wondered, when should clients look to involve family members when they're having their discussions with advisors about this important topic?
Absolutely. I think that estate planning is all about families, basically. I think that sometimes we think about individuals in terms of a client, but I think particularly in this area, it is very much about a family decision. Ultimately, the outcomes is going to be going down to people that matter to them. These are their daughters and sons and grandchildren and so on. And I think that the advisors that I work with that do really well in this space are the ones that get perhaps the emotional outcome of estate planning. It's not just about the numbers, it's about who's getting it and what difference does it make to their lives. I think involving the family actually makes that both a good thing from a professional point, that you're engaging with the different generations. That might also be quite useful for, these could be your future clients as well. So making sure you're perhaps capturing that wealth as it does cascade down. But I think also it's about buying an understanding of what's happening, how we're doing it. And I think actually there's one advisor said to me once, he has two jobs. One is to prepare the money for the children, and the second job is to prepare the children for the money.
Yeah, it's a really
and
good
I think they're both really
way,
important.
isn't it?
So all those are about sort of family decisions. So yeah, family is absolutely key in these areas.
Obviously, generally, families are very important to us all, and you would hope that you would have a nice, supporting, caring family.
Yeah.
What do we do in terms of, there could be the risk of manipulation, I guess, when it's involving this talk of money?
Yeah, and I think that's probably where financial advisors actually play a very important role, to perhaps be that independent person in the room. I think many advisors have done well to have vulnerable client policies actually from their own side, but actually how they use that for a client in front of them to understand, is there being perhaps some undue pressure elsewhere? Are the family members really acting on behalf of the good of their parents, but perhaps? So I think, yes, having that right way of doing it, and that's one thing about, yes, involve the family, but also have time apart. Yeah. To say, okay, was that really what you felt comfortable to do? Were those the decisions that really sat well for you? I have one advisor that actually gets out a family tree. And so we've seen everyone here, draw them all out. Now, that's quite a nice idea anyway, to get a sense of all the potential beneficiaries but also from that, perhaps the people you like or don't like.
Yes,
he comes with actually, he puts a green pen and a red pen out. And says, right, okay, green ticks for the people you really like, but red crosses for the people you don't.
Yeah.
And that just shows planning isn't about the money always, it's also about the relationships. And there can be, family doesn't just mean your bloodline, it means the extended family and potential divorce and all things around that. So yeah, absolutely.
I bet there's some interesting discussions there as to why someone's on the green list or on the red list.
Exactly, yeah, it's not like sort of travel sort of thing, but I think he's come back with some stories where people have put so much red over one name, it's sort of gone through the paper.
Yeah.
So yeah, you definitely don't want that person getting their money there.
Excellent. Inheritance tax can be a bit of a minefield, probably. What sort of products are out there to help alleviate that problem? Yeah,
I think that there's perhaps a perception of complexity, but I think when it comes down to it, that planning can be fairly straightforward. The first thing is just being aware of what the issue is. So it's not necessarily an inheritance tax, actually it's just estate planning. You know, what have you got? What does it mean? How are you going to live your life? I think a lot of planners do good things with cash flow modelling tools and some to try and model what a good life would be from that side. But when it comes down to it, so many options, and it shouldn't be just be seen as the one silver bullet out there. Starting point should be spend it and enjoy your life in one go at it, live it. And I think some advisors do say, you really can afford to spend more. I love the phrase that I've heard once, that when you retire, learn to ski, spend the kids' inheritance.
Nice.
And I think that's a great little phrase. And actually, it's quite disarming, I think, for some clients, because they're not being forced on a financial product at all. It's about planning, so that could be spending it, but if you can afford to give it away, give it away. Yeah. And there are both checkbook planning there. On top of that, people look quite carefully about how they deal with their pension now. You might think about whole of life, if you've perhaps got more liquid assets, can be quite simple planning. We come in with business property relief, and that's making the most of another allowance out there. It's probably particularly useful, I think, for some clients that go, I'm happy to care about my my estate and how the estate's passed on, but I do need to care about myself first.
You first, yeah.
And I think that perhaps gives an option to retain access and control of the money. Yes, you have the 2-year clock part of BPR, which is very useful, perhaps if you've got a more impaired life. But I think actually it's the access and the control that perhaps has a psychological feeling of that. So this is my money if I need it. Yeah. Subject to liquidity, you've got to think about the underlying investments, the risk of the investments. But as one of the answers, it can be quite a useful answer, but not on its own.
Yeah.
Spend it, gift it, use trust, everything. I think one of the great things is there is such a plethora of answers to provide a really holistic plan for a client.
That thought of thinking of yourself first is it's like the analogy of when you're on a plane, isn't it? Put your own oxygen mask on before you help somebody else, really. But we're talking about as well intergenerational wealth and sort of maybe transferring money before the worst happens and you die. Obviously, sort of grandparents might want to see someone get married, they might want to help someone buy their first house. How are we starting some of those conversations then? We're as a society, we're quite bad at talking about money, we're quite bad about talking about bad things happening or what might happen later on. So it's quite nice to share it while you can.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've heard the horrible phrase, which I really don't like, which is sort of give with a warm hand, not a cold one, which I think I don't like now. So the image of that I don't quite like. But I think that it should be about the joy of what you can afford to do. You know, what life have you afforded yourself? You might have afforded yourself an amazing retirement, but if you've afforded yourself things that also are important to you. I went to a client's house, before the whole sort of lockdown thing happened all those months ago, and I was really struck by all the pictures in her house. They weren't art. There were graduations and weddings and so on. It was really clear that the most important thing to her in her life at that stage was her family. So helping her family made her happy. And so it should be about a happiness index there to think, how would I change their lives? Not just a monetary amount, but am I gifting education? Am I gifting fun? Am I gifting security? That's almost the emotions of money. I think planners are much better about getting that out. It's perhaps more difficult to be the greedy son or daughter, though, to go and say, so Mum, Dad, you must have loads of money. And that is more awkward, definitely. But I think perhaps it's for perhaps the planning world to demonstrate you've actually got plenty of money, almost too much money. And that's, again, where the cash flow modelling tools will go in. You could live to 150 and never spend all this money. So if that is the case, what's the point? So could you do something more useful with it? Whether that's gifting to children or charities, whatever, could this money be used more usefully, more quickly, I guess.
We'll be keeping you pretty busy in our conference later on this afternoon. You'll be on a panel about the intergenerational wealth, but also you'll be talking about people sort of accidentally becoming wealthy. Can you give us a little snippet, maybe?
Yeah, I guess a snippet to that is that I think when you think about estate planning, there is a high bar to need perhaps broader planning where inheritance tax plays a role. And broadly speaking, if you put the two allowances of the residence nil rate band and also the standard nil rate bands, you've broadly got £1 million as a free allowance, which for the vast majority of the country is plenty of money. So lots of people don't need to have inheritance tax conversations at all. But there's been an increasing number of people that do. And that's through a couple of reasons, I guess. I mean, one, I'll talk about sort of the frozen threshold. I hope I can say that easier a bit later. But the other side is also just increasing wealth. And I guess the accidental wealth, a lot of that has come from property. I guess we think about our houses as our homes, not as investments. Perhaps we're pleased when they go up in value and so on, but that's not why we bought them necessarily. And I think that's where we've seen, I think the stat is something like 637,000 homes in the UK are worth more than £1 million. But in the last 18 months in the pandemic, with a lot of house moves and so on, I think about 113,000 of that number have come in that last 18 months. So with that, I almost feel that, and again, teeth in for this one, the house takes you to the precipice of planning. Because if you've got that £1 million house, which is not necessarily a tennis court and a swimming pool anymore, or this grand sort of place we're in today, it's perhaps brought sort of a lot of middle England into the need for planning. This bit has started to use up your allowances, so all the other prudent decisions you've made, that could be just general, ISA saving has been a consistent saving. It's amazing some of the wealth people have in ISA. The small beans of financial services suddenly add up to pots of hundreds of thousands, which is then pushed into those out of those bandings into that threat of that inheritance tax, which is 40% is a fairly punitive hit on that prudent saving.
Yeah. Is there a particular age that advisors should start having these conversations with clients, or the earlier the better?
I guess planning is always about being ahead of time, isn't it? I think that generically, I mean, sometimes money comes with age, just because it takes time to sort of live a life and build and pay for things and so on, and perhaps that's where accumulated wealth and the need for advice sort of come together. I probably see it's come a little bit earlier in recent years, and probably because of the pension changes. A pension has really sort of changed to be perhaps one of your biggest trust funds you'll ever have. So when someone retires now, they're making a decision about what's retirement look like and where do I take income from. And it might be that the pension isn't necessarily the best pot to take income from, because its efficiency had been passed down through the generations. So they've already made a bit of a thought to, what have I got, but where is it? What are the different pots and what are the different goals? I think it probably takes a few years to be retired, to not be earning, to know what it feels like to sort of think about that next phase of life. So there's no doubt it's probably your 65, 70 plus is where your majority of the planning comes through to. I mean, all the way through to, I think the oldest client that we're looking after in our business property leaf investments is 105.
Wow.
So it's never too late to plan, but the earlier you can plan, always the better.
Yeah, actually, when I used to be a local newspaper reporter, I remember writing stories about someone turning 105.
Yeah,
and,
amazing.
It's fascinating, really, isn't it? Octopus Investments has been a big supporter of Money Marketing Interactive, and thank you very much. We couldn't obviously put this event on without you. What's it like to be back in person? And why is Money Marketing Interactive something that you want to support?
Yeah, what's it like to be back? Good, slightly strange. Should I wear a tie? All those sort of things.
You look fine.
Exactly. I think it's just been nice to have perhaps a wide range of varied discussions. I think you can't put a price on those little coffee breaks sort of amounts, that little snippet sort of. It might only be a 5-minute chat, but it's the only bit you really need to get that little engagement where someone goes, actually, that's interesting, we should have a chat about that. I think you lose that in the Zoom world.
You do,
I think Zoom has transformed our way of dealing with financial services, both for me dealing with financial advisors dealing with clients. There's definitely some great efficiencies. But I think if you can put an injection with these types of sort of face-to-face events, where you're obviously giving such a varied agenda as well, that it's not sort of, am I turning up for just this? Actually, sometimes people get the breadth of things, and maybe they learn things they weren't expecting to. Think, I never really thought about that, or that was a session I didn't think would pique my interest. So I think having that breadth, and it's just nice to see sort of people out.
It's nice, isn't it, that people actually have legs.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yes, this whole sort of, we never know how tall people are anymore.
No, exactly. Nick, thank you very much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure catching up with you.
Thanks, Katey. Enjoyed it.